Know your value, men. Don't accept less. I stared at it longer than I should have, because 6 months earlier, that same man had rejected my proposal. He didn't say, I need time, or let's talk about it. He didn't ask to slow down or work through fears together. He just said no and told me he wasn't ready. That 4 years still felt too fast, that he needed to discover himself and see what else was out there before he committed to one woman for the rest of his life. So I did something small, quiet, controlled. I liked his post, and I commented underneath it, women should know their value too. That was it. No sarcasm, no rant, no backstory, just one line that said, without begging, without pleading, I see what you're doing. He deleted my comment within an hour. 6 months later, he saw my engagement announcement online, and the call he made that night, frantic, breathless, shaking with the kind of panic you only feel when the safety net disappears, revealed what the last 6 months were really about. I'm 29 years old, and I still can't wrap my head around how quickly the truth showed itself once I stopped protecting his image. But I need to tell this story because the last 24 hours have been brutal in the most clarifying way. 7 months ago, I proposed to my boyfriend, Ethan. He was 28. We'd been together 4 years, living together for 2. We talked about marriage, kids, the future. So often it felt like a plan, not a fantasy. I planned a simple evening, nothing extravagant. I'm a financial analyst, not a startup billionaire, but I'm thoughtful. I took him to the park, where we had our first date, waited until dusk by the lake, and got down on one knee with a ring I'd saved 6 months for. A simple diamond, exactly his style. He said no, and the worst part wasn't the rejection. It was what came after. The posts, the performance, the way he turned I need to explore into I know my worth, like leaving me was self-respect instead of selfishness. He thought that story would hold. He didn't expect me to move on. And he definitely didn't expect the person I got engaged to was someone who picked me first. Before everything fell apart, my life looked steady from the outside. I was 29, working as a financial analyst, disciplined, practical, the kind of woman who planned ahead and believed consistency mattered more than grand gestures. I wasn't flashy. I didn't chase attention. I built things slowly, intentionally, and I believed relationships worked the same way. Ethan and I met when we were both younger, still figuring ourselves out, but already imagining where we wanted to end up. He was charming in an effortless way, confident without being loud, ambitious without openly saying so. I admired that about him. He made big plans sound exciting, like life was something you could optimize if you just chose correctly. We fell into each other's lives easily. Dates turned into routines. Routines turned into living together. 2 years under the same roof made us feel like a unit. We talked about marriage casually at first, then more seriously. He talked about kids someday, about timing, about wanting to do things right. Every conversation made me feel like we were aligned, even when we weren't making concrete moves yet. I supported him through things he doesn't like to admit were hard. Career stress that kept him up at night. His father's surgery, where he tried to be strong for everyone and broke down only when we were alone. Panic attacks he pretended were just bad days. I didn't fix him. I didn't try to control him. I stayed. I listened. I showed up. He always said he appreciated that, said I grounded him, said I was his safe place. Looking back, that should have made me pause. Because sometimes safe doesn't mean valued. Sometimes it just means convenient. I noticed small things over time that didn't feel wrong enough to confront. The way he talked about friends who leveled up their lives. The way he joked about people settling too early. The way he followed certain influencers who preached self-worth but never talked about loyalty. He'd scroll and nod, like he was absorbing advice meant for someone else. His friend Chloe played a role too. She was always talking about options, about not limiting yourself, about dating CEOs and doctors and founders like it was a checklist. Ethan laughed it off, but I saw how those conversations lingered with him longer than he admitted. Still, I believed in us. 4 years together felt earned. 2 years living together felt tested. When I proposed, it wasn't impulsive. It was the result of choosing him over and over again. I thought he'd see it that way too. I didn't know that while I was building something solid, he was quietly wondering what else was out there. I didn't know that to him, commitment wasn't a finish line. It was a door he wanted to leave cracked open. And I definitely didn't know that saying no to me wasn't the end of his story. It was the beginning of his experiment. After the proposal, something subtle but unmistakable shifted between us. Not in the loud, obvious way people expect after rejection, but in the quiet spaces where meaning usually lives. The silences got longer. The conversations felt edited, like he was choosing his words carefully, not to protect my feelings, but to protect his options. He moved out 3 days after saying no and went to stay with Chloe. He framed it as needing space, needing clarity, needing time to think. I told myself that was fair. I told myself 4 years deserved patience. But patience started to feel less like grace and more like self-erasure. That same night he left, I saw the post. Know your value, men. Don't accept less. It sat there on my screen like a verdict. His friends flooded the comments with praise. Proud of you. Never settle. You did the right thing. They spoke as if he'd escaped something small and limiting, not walked away from a woman who loved him enough to choose him publicly. I scrolled at 2 a.m, my chest tight, replaying the last 4 years in my head. I thought about the nights I stayed up helping him prep for interviews, the weekends I rearranged my schedule around his deadlines, the way I held his hand in hospital corridors when his dad went into surgery. None of that showed up in the comments. None of that counted as value. So I liked the post, and I commented, women should know their value too. It wasn't meant to provoke, it was meant to exist. To remind myself more than anyone else that worth isn't gendered and it isn't selective. Within an hour, my comment was gone, deleted, erased, but not before mutual friends saw it and messaged me quietly, asking if I was okay. That's when I realized something important. He wanted the narrative, not the truth. He wanted validation without accountability. He wanted to explore without consequence. I went into survival mode after that. Work, gym, sleep, repeat. I deleted social apps from my phone so I wouldn't keep checking whether he'd posted again. I started therapy, telling myself it was about processing the breakup. It turned out to be about something deeper. My therapist helped me see how often I'd dimmed my own light to keep him comfortable, how often I'd translated my steadiness into silence so his restlessness could feel important. 2 months later, something unexpected happened. Lily, a coworker I'd survived a brutal project with, suggested coffee. Just coffee. She knew about the breakup. She didn't ask invasive questions. She listened. She was straightforward in a way that felt grounding instead of demanding. Coffee turned into dinners. Dinners turned into dates. I kept it low-key, careful not to rebound, careful not to replace one attachment with another. But something felt different. With Lily, I could breathe. I didn't feel like I was auditioning for a role or competing with an imaginary future. I didn't know then that the distance Ethan asked for wasn't about finding himself. It was about shopping. And I didn't know that my quiet comment under his post had already started a clock he didn't realize was ticking. Because when someone treats you like an option, time becomes the loudest truth teller of all. Fast forward to last week. Lily and I got engaged. It still feels strange writing that sentence. Not because it happened too quickly, but because of how certain it felt when it did. We were camping, nothing fancy, just the two of us, and a quiet stretch of land where cell service barely worked. At some point that evening, as the fire died down and the sky turned deep blue, she looked at me and said she knew what she wanted, that she didn't see a reason to wait, that she wasn't afraid of choosing. She proposed to me. There was no speech rehearsed in advance, no audience, no performance, just honesty. I said yes immediately, without hesitation, without fear, without wondering if I was settling or being settled for. We shared a simple photo online a few days later. The two of us sitting close, camping gear behind us, smiling in a way that felt unguarded. The caption was simple too. Life partner found. A small heart. A quiet yes. My phone lit up with congratulations. Friends, family, coworkers, people who had watched me pull myself back together after the breakup sent messages saying how happy I looked. And for the first time in months, I believed it. Then at 11:43 p.m., my phone rang. Ethan. I almost didn't answer. 6 months is a long time to stay silent, and part of me knew nothing good would come from picking up, but curiosity got the better of me. Maybe closure, maybe an overdue apology, maybe nothing at all. I answered. Heavy breathing filled the line before he spoke. Are you serious right now? He said. Hi, Ethan, I replied, keeping my voice calm. 6 months, he said, incredulous. You're engaged in 6 months? Yes, I said. People usually congratulate first. He laughed, sharp and bitter. To who? That quiet woman from finance? She's not quiet, I said evenly. She's just not loud about her success. Her name is Lily, and we're happy. This is insane, he said. 4 years together, and you just moved on? I moved on when you rejected my proposal and framed it as settling, I replied. This didn't happen overnight. There was a pause, then his voice changed. And that's when he told me what the last 6 months had really been about. After I asked, moved on from what exactly? There was a long silence on the line. Not the kind where someone is thinking carefully, the kind where they're deciding how much truth to admit. Then he exhaled. I needed to see what else was out there, he said. Not sad, frustrated, almost defensive. He talked about Chloe, about how she kept telling him stories of the men she was dating, CEOs, doctors, startup founders. How she said he was too young to lock in with his first real girlfriend. How she said there was no harm in exploring before committing for life. I laughed once, quietly. So I was your fallback, I said. No, he said quickly. I just wanted to be sure. I thought I'd date around for a year, grow, explore. Then we'd get back together and I'd know you were the one. I closed my eyes. You publicly rejected my proposal, I said. And you didn't think I'd see your post? We have 137 mutual friends, Ethan. He got defensive, started talking about the pressure men face, about blogs Chloe showed him, stories of people who committed too early and lived with regret. He said he didn't want to resent me later. So you humiliated me, I said, and expected me to wait while you shopped for better options. It wasn't like that, he insisted. I barely dated anyone seriously. Barely. Then his voice dropped. The guys Chloe set me up with weren't what I expected, he admitted. The CEO only wanted casual. The doctor ghosted me when I wouldn't hook up. The startup founder was couch surfing. No real company, just a good Instagram. He went quiet again. I realized what we had was rare, he said. I was going to reach out after a year, act like I'd grown, and we'd get back together. You'd propose again, and we'd be set. Based on a lie. I did grow, he said quickly. I learned what I wanted. Yes, I replied. You learned you wanted your safety net. I told him that safety net had found someone who chose me first. That's when he lost it. He started yelling, said Lily was a downgrade, said I was rebounding, said our friends thought I was moving too fast. I stayed calm. You ended us, I said. You made it clear I wasn't enough. I respected that and moved forward. I found someone who sees me as her first choice, not a backup after testing the market. You're making a mistake, he said. She doesn't even know you like I do. You're right, I replied. She doesn't know the version of me who shrank to keep someone else comfortable. She knows the version of me who shows up fully. I like that woman better. He went silent. Then he said, when you realize what you've lost and come crawling back, I won't be here. Good, I said, because I'm not crawling anywhere. I hung up, thinking that was the end of it. I was wrong. I sat there after the call ended, phone still warm in my hand, heart steady in a way that surprised me. I didn't feel shaken. I didn't feel tempted. I felt clarified. For years, I had wondered whether I was asking for too much, whether wanting certainty meant I was demanding or rigid. That phone call answered every question I'd ever swallowed. He hadn't needed space to grow. He'd needed space to browse, and he'd assumed I'd stay on the shelf until he came back convinced. Lily came back from the restroom and took one look at my face. Everything okay? She asked. I nodded. Yeah, actually, yeah. I told her the truth that night. Not dramatized, not edited to protect my pride. I told her about the proposal, the rejection, the post, the comment, the call. She listened without interrupting, without trying to compete with a ghost. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm glad you didn't wait, she said simply. So was I. The next morning, messages started coming in. Mutual friends who'd seen the engagement post reached out, some congratulating, some cautious, some clearly carrying questions they didn't know how to ask. I answered what mattered and ignored what didn't. I wasn't interested in relitigating a story that no longer belonged to me. By evening, Ethan tried again. Different number, same urgency. Can we talk like adults, he wrote. We already did, I replied, and you told me everything I needed to know. He pushed, said he'd been under pressure, said Chloe had influenced him, said he never meant to hurt me, said he cared, said he still cared. I read the messages once and didn't respond. Care that arrives only after you lose control isn't care. It's panic. That night I asked myself the question I'd been avoiding for months. What did I actually grieve when he left? The answer wasn't him. It was the future I thought we were building together. Once I separated the two, the grief lost its grip. I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. The next day, Lily suggested we go for a walk. No agenda, no processing, just movement. As we walked, I noticed how light my body felt, how unburdened my thoughts were. I wasn't bracing for disappointment. I wasn't translating myself into something more palatable. That's when I realized my reaction wasn't about healing from heartbreak. It was about reclaiming myself from a story where I was never meant to be the lead, only the fallback. And I was done being anyone's contingency plan. 3 days after that call, everything escalated. Not because I did anything, but because Ethan couldn't tolerate losing control of the narrative. It started with Chloe. Lily showed me a message request she'd received on social media. She didn't know Chloe. They had never met. The message was written carefully, wrapped in fake concern, the kind that pretends to be protective while planting poison. Hey, just reaching out woman to woman. I'm close with Ethan's ex, and you deserve to know some things about your fiancé. She's clearly using you to get over him. She was obsessed with Ethan and pushed him to marry her. When he needed space, she stalked him online. Now she's love-bombing you to make him jealous. You seem nice. Don't fall for it. Lily read it once, then laughed. She replied calmly, "Thanks for the heads up, but I'm curious why you're more focused on my relationship than your friend's dating life. How did those setups work out for him?" Chloe blocked her immediately. Savage, but it didn't stop there. Mutual friends suddenly began checking in. People I hadn't spoken to in months reached out with concern, disguised as judgment. Jake texted, "Heard about the engagement, moving fast, huh? You sure?" My old roommate Sam said, "Ethan's really wrecked. Maybe you should talk to him." Even my cousin messaged, "Ethan called me. He's worried you're being reckless. Slow down." The nerve. I posted one sentence and left it at that. Funny how people who didn't check on you while you were healing suddenly care about your choices. 20 minutes later, Ethan called from a new number. I had blocked his main one. I answered, already knowing this wouldn't be about peace. "We need to handle this like adults," he said immediately. "There's nothing to handle," I replied. "You're clearly lashing out," he continued. "I get it, but destroying what we had over pride isn't healthy." "What we had?" I said. "You mean the relationship where you were actively hunting for upgrades while keeping me as a fallback?" "It was 4 years," he snapped. "I thought we were building something." "I thought so too," I said, "until you were already halfway out the door." "I made a mistake." "Your mistake was thinking I'd wait while you shopped for better options," I said. "Mine was proposing to someone who was already looking elsewhere." He shifted tactics. "So you're marrying Lily out of spite?" "No," I answered. "I'm marrying her because she saw me and said, 'That's my person.' No doubts, no browsing, just yes." He scoffed. "This isn't you. You don't move this fast. You overthink everything." "I overthought how to make you happy for 4 years," I replied. "I never stopped to ask if I was." There was silence. Then, quietly, he asked, "Were you not happy?" "Happy enough," I said, "but enough isn't enough anymore." "So that's it?" he said. 4 years for someone you've known a few months?" "I'm building something real with someone who picked me first," I said. Not as a safe bet after exploring. "When this falls apart," he warned, "and it will—" "If it does," I interrupted, "it will still be more honest than what we had." I hung up. That's when I thought the worst was over. I was wrong again. The real low point didn't happen during the calls, the messages, or even the manipulation through other people. It happened the night after I hung up on him, when everything finally went quiet. No buzzing phone, no new messages, no one demanding explanations. Just silence. Lily was already asleep when I lay down beside her, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying the last 7 months in painful clarity. Not just the rejection, but the slow realization that I had been living inside someone else's uncertainty for years without naming it. I thought about the proposal again. The lake, the dusk, the ring in my hand, how sure I had been, how exposed I felt standing there while strangers watched me get turned down. I remembered telling myself at the time that love meant patience, that understanding someone's fear was part of partnership. But lying there in the dark, I finally let myself ask the question I'd avoided. What if patience was just another word I used to excuse being sidelined? That question hit harder than anything he'd said. I slipped out of bed and went to the kitchen, the floor cold under my feet. I poured a glass of water and stood there, gripping the counter, feeling the weight of something deeper than heartbreak. This wasn't just about losing him. It was about confronting how long I'd accepted being an option in my own life. I had shaped myself around his uncertainty, made room for his what ifs, interpreted his hesitation as thoughtfulness instead of avoidance. And when he walked away to explore, I stayed still out of respect for a relationship that only existed fully in my head. That was the moment it broke me. Not in a dramatic way, quietly. Tears came without warning, sliding down my face as I realized how much of myself I'd given to someone who never fully chose me. I cried for the years I'd spent waiting to be certain together, while he planned to be uncertain alone. For the first time, I wondered if I would have waited forever if he hadn't said no so bluntly, if I would have kept believing love meant standing still while someone else kept one foot out the door. That thought scared me more than losing him ever did. I went back to bed and lay there until morning, not sleeping, not spiraling, just sitting with the truth. The truth that I had hit the emotional bottom, not because I'd been rejected, but because I'd finally seen myself clearly inside that rejection. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. By the time the sun came up, my chest still ached, but something else was there too, resolve. A quiet, steady knowing that whatever came next couldn't be built on half choices anymore. This was the lowest point, and it was also the place where I finally stopped lying to myself. The shift didn't arrive with fireworks or a dramatic declaration. It came quietly the next morning, while I was sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee I'd already let go cold. I realized I wasn't angry at Ethan anymore. Anger had kept me engaged with him. Anger kept the door open. And what I felt now wasn't anger. It was distance. Clean, unmistakable distance. That's when Lily sat across from me and said something simple that changed everything. "You know," she said, stirring her coffee, "none of this feels confusing to me." I looked up. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she continued gently, "you didn't lose him. He removed himself. And the moment he did, your life started moving forward instead of waiting." That landed harder than any argument ever could. Later that day, Lily's phone buzzed while we were making dinner. She glanced at the screen, frowned, then handed it to me without a word. Her friend Sarah had sent screenshots from a dating app. Guess who had a profile? Ethan, created 5 months ago, 2 months before he rejected my proposal. The bio read, "Ambitious dreamer seeking someone driven to match my lifestyle. No room for average." I felt my stomach drop, not from pain, but from clarity. There were conversations, messages where he described himself as freshly single, messages where he talked about outgrowing his last relationship. One chat stood out in particular. Someone had asked why his previous relationship ended. His reply, "She was nice, but she was fine with average. I'm building more than that." Average. 4 years of support. 4 years of showing up. 4 years of building a life together. Average. The timestamps told the full story. He had been on apps while we were picking out rings, while I was saving for a proposal, while he was letting me believe we were building toward the same future. And the final detail felt almost absurd. His profile was still active, updated 3 days earlier, new photos, a new line added beneath the bio. "Rising from the ashes, know your value and demand more." I laughed, not bitterly, not hysterically, just relieved. Because that was the moment the last piece fell into place. He hadn't rejected me to find himself. He hadn't needed space to grow. He had been auditioning replacements while keeping me on hold. That night, as if on cue, a message came through from yet another number. "I've been reflecting," Ethan wrote. "I'm ready to forgive you for moving on so fast. If we can start over, I see my role in this. We can fix it." "Forgive me." I didn't respond. Instead, I posted for the first time in months. "When someone shows you their truth, believe it. Grateful for lessons and for my future." I added one more line. "Pro tip, if you're playing games, don't leave evidence on dating apps." I tagged Lily and wrote, "Thank you for picking me first. Always." My phone exploded within minutes. Friends who had heard Ethan's version started asking questions. People who had stayed neutral suddenly wanted context. Screenshots traveled faster than explanations ever could. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to manage the narrative. The truth was louder than I ever needed to be, and I finally understood what power felt like. It wasn't confrontation, it wasn't revenge. It was choosing myself without hesitation. The fallout didn't creep in quietly. It detonated. Within hours of my post, the version of events Ethan had been feeding people started collapsing under its own weight. Friends who had reached out to check on me suddenly followed up with apologies. Screenshots circulated. Timelines didn't line up anymore. The questions shifted from, "Why did you move on so fast?" to, "Wait, he was on apps while you were together?" That's when Chloe cracked. She sent a long message to a group chat that included several mutual friends, and once it was out there, it couldn't be pulled back. She admitted she had access to Ethan's dating profiles to help optimize them. She admitted the profiles weren't new. They hadn't been created after the rejection. They'd been active for months. Real dates, real conversations, real lies. And then came the spreadsheet. I still can't believe I'm typing that sentence. Chloe shared it to explain herself as if context would soften the damage. It was a document where she and Ethan had ranked potential partners by salary, career trajectory, looks, and lifestyle compatibility. I was on it. Number 4 for reliability, number 11 for lifestyle goals, 11 out of 15. The top slot belonged to a hedge fund guy who had just imploded in a crypto scandal 2 weeks before my proposal. When his empire crashed, I suddenly looked more appealing. Not chosen, appealing. That was why Ethan said no. Not to grow, not to find himself, but because he thought he could do better than number 11. When the apps didn't deliver, when the options dried up, when the fantasy collapsed, he tried to come back to the safe choice he'd left waiting. Except I wasn't waiting anymore. The group chat exploded. People were furious, not just at the dating, but at the manipulation, at the way Ethan had positioned himself as the wounded one while quietly shopping, at how he'd encouraged others to pressure me to be understanding. Ethan tried to spin it. He posted a series of stories about gaslighting, betrayal, and toxic expectations, framing himself as a man punished for having standards. He lost followers by the hour. People asked questions he couldn't answer. Some of the men he'd gone out with started sharing their own screenshots, confirming he'd told them he was single while living with me. Then he showed up at my building. Security called. "There's a man here saying it's urgent." "Is he hurt or in danger?" I asked. "No." "Then it's not urgent," I said. "Ask him to leave." He made a scene outside. Neighbors filmed it. One clip went viral, entitled "Ex Causes Drama at Building Over New Engagement." It hit nearly 1 million views in a day. The final message came from yet another number. "Congrats. You ruined my life. Enjoy your downgrade. When she betrays you, remember you had someone who loved you enough to make sure. Your ego couldn't handle it. Enjoy your average life with your average fiancé." I didn't reply. I forwarded it to a lawyer friend who advised me to stop all contact and document everything for a restraining order, just in case. The fallout didn't destroy him because of me. It destroyed him because the truth doesn't stay buried when too many people have seen the receipts. And I walked away from it all calmly, finally free of the need to explain myself. It's been a week since the chaos burned itself out, and for the first time in months, my life feels quiet in a way that doesn't scare me. I stopped refreshing my phone. I stopped tracking who said what, who sided with whom, who finally figured out the truth. None of it matters anymore. The story closed itself the moment I chose not to keep responding. Lily and I are planning a small wedding. Not because we're trying to prove anything, not because we're rushing to beat some imaginary clock, but because being with her feels uncomplicated in the best way. We cook dinner together. We binge ridiculous shows. We leave each other notes on the counter for no reason at all. She gets me coffee on Wednesdays just because she knows it's my hardest day. She saw me at my lowest and didn't flinch. I saw her at her most honest and didn't hesitate. No rankings, no comparisons, no backups. Emma moved back to her hometown. She deleted most of her social media. Chloe posted something vague about learning who your true friends are and growth through pain. Emma's old Know Your Value post is still up, frozen in time. My comment is gone, but the internet doesn't forget. Someone turned the screenshots into a meme. Brutal, yes. But I didn't make it. I didn't share it. I don't need to. Here's the truth I've learned, and it didn't come gently. Worth isn't what you think you're entitled to. It's what you bring to the table when no one is watching. I spent years trying to earn someone's certainty. Years translating love into patience, loyalty into silence, commitment into waiting. I thought that if I showed up consistently enough, I'd eventually be chosen without hesitation. I was wrong. The right person doesn't need time to test the market. The right person doesn't keep you as a fallback. The right person doesn't rank you while telling you they just need space. When someone treats you like an option instead of a priority, believe them. Don't argue. Don't perform. Don't wait for them to see your worth after they've already decided it's conditional. Find the person who chooses you first, every time, without hesitation. I didn't lose 4 years. I gained clarity. And clarity, I've learned, is the most expensive gift heartbreak can give you, because once you have it, you never accept less again.